Hi everyone, and thank you for joining this LIDC event today. We're still waiting for a few more people to be let in from the waiting room before we get started. So my name is Gunn Benjaminson. I'm the Communications Manager at LIDC. Today we have with us Dr. Sevasti Foka from Queen Mary, University of London. She's a senior lecturer in psychology. And today she will talk about a special program that she developed after volunteering as a counselor in refugee camps in Lesbos. But before we start, just some housekeeping. So as you know, this is being recorded, so we'll publish a recording of it on our website in case you want to recap. We can ask you to please, well, I see everyone has already muted themselves and kept their cameras off, which is great. There will be an opportunity to ask questions after Sevasti is finished with her presentations. So you can also write in the chat box if you have any questions, or you can wait until the end of this event. If you want to live tweet, you're more than welcome to do so. I think my colleague Alessia will post the Twitter handles in the chat box. So I think without further ado, I think I'll hand over to Dr. Sevasti Foka for her presentation. Thank you.
Hello all. Just give me a couple of seconds to share my screen. Brilliant. Thank you very much for the introduction again. I really appreciate that. Hello all. My name is Sevasti Foka, and I am a senior lecturer at Queen Mary University. I'm also a counseling psychologist myself and a psychotherapist. And this was my motivation of working with this population. My second motivation for working with these children and young people is that I am a refugee myself. My family has come from a city in Turkey, and I lived for about 11 years in a community which was very much refugee based. The outline of today's talk is based on presenting my work with refugee children and adolescents. Before I move on to discuss our program and what we were trying to do over the last 6 years, I will give you some background of the refugee crisis in Greece from 2015 till now. And then I will introduce with you our program and how it was developed. Also in the end, I'm going to present some findings from an exploratory study we have conducted 2 years ago to measure, to assess the efficacy of the Strengths for the Journey Resilience program that we have developed. We will have quite a lot of time, I hope, for discussion, and I welcome any comments, ideas or suggestions for our work. This will be very, very much appreciated. As you may know, Greece, due to its geographical position, is experiencing a refugee crisis over the last few years. since 2015, over 1 million of refugee people have passed from Turkey to the Greek islands and then to the mainland of Greece. And then from there, they are traveling to all sorts of various hosting countries, mainly in the Northern Europe, and in particular, particularly Germany. Half of this population who is traveling from Turkey to Greece, half of this population are children under the age of 18. In 2016, while, as I said, hundreds of thousands of people were passing by the sea, two factors have created a huge crisis, a huge refugee crisis in Europe and in Greece. The first one was that the first one was the tragic drownings which took place in the Aegean Sea and have created a lot of debates in Europe. And the second factor was that the majority of these over 1 million of people did not want to stay in Greece or in the south, but wanted, they have come to Greece, to the Greek islands, in the hope of moving to the Northern Europe. Now, these newcomers were framed by Europe as a threat, both in terms of the cultural differences and also in terms of the lack of resources in some countries in order to accommodate for these numbers. As a result of this, there were a lot of debates about the situation, and then Europe with Turkey have come to a deal, the very famous EU-Turkey deal. According to this agreement, Europe's borders have closed in Greece, and this had as a result to trap all these hundreds of thousands of people in Greece for a lot of years, for quite a lot of years, before they were eligible to travel to other countries, to other hosting countries. We also need to have in our mind that this situation has dramatically changed the situation in terms of the mental health of this population. The reasons was that upon arrival in Greece, many of these people were placed in refugee camps, and in there they had very limited access to school and mental health services. There was a lot of research studies that were conducted since 2016, which reflect this crisis in mental health, especially among children and adolescents and youth populations. A study from MSF reported that half of the children who lived in Greece suffered from panic attacks, anxiety, and aggressive outbursts, but also another study in Moria refugee camp, which used to be the biggest refugee camp in Greece, found that there was a lot of psychosocial distress among refugees, and especially young people, and huge rates, very high rates of suicide attempts. These pictures are taken from a month ago, just 4 weeks ago, in the largest camp of the South Europe called Karatepe camp. And you can see the conditions that people are living still in the island of Lesbos, where they live in tents in the middle of the summer, and also they don't have any access to resources. They live in the tents without electricity or water supply. Actually, the children have to walk about an hour to get water for themselves and their families. Now, as you can understand, the children who are living in the Greek refugee camps do not did not just only experience trauma during their displacement from their home countries, but they have been exposed to other types of violence in the refugee camps and other adverse living conditions. They have limited access to education. They suffer from poor health because they have, again, very limited access to health services, public health services. And they continuously, in the majority of the research studies, they report increased psychological disturbance. Now, all these factors are considered to be risk factors which are associated with mental health issues. And this is what we know by now, based on this research evidence that we have in regards to the risk factors. Now, there is very valuable research. There is a lot of empirical evidence which shows to us that there are certain protective factors which, if cultivated, they can lead to resilience, to building resilience, and equip children and youth to cope better under adversity and under these very challenging living conditions. A very important study has shown, as you can see, has shown that these protective factors were found to be, first of all, parental support and support from friends living in the refugee camps, or in the wider community, but also positive school experiences were found to have a very, very positive impact on the child's psychological functioning. And actually, this knowledge, not just the theoretical background and the exploration of the literature review, but working personally for over a few years with refugee children and youth, we established this very big gap in interventions. So we developed the Stems for the Journey intervention. We don't like to call it intervention, but a program, a resilience building program, which focuses on these protective factors and cultivates personal social and psychological resources such as hope and self-esteem and goal setting, thinking, and positive emotions. So we developed this program in order to cultivate these psychological resources and reduce depressive symptoms in order to equip children and young people with those important resilience skills that will help them cope better with adversity, but also it will equip them to when they are going to live in a hosting country. This program is a very structured program. It's a program that can be used in a formal educational system, but also in informal educational settings. It has been adopted in all refugee camps in Lesbos Island, which accommodates for hundreds of thousands of refugee families and unaccompanied minors. It is a 6 days, it's a 6-session intervention which can be delivered within a week or within a month or a year. And it is very much manualized, which means that we have created a manual, and this manual was translated in 4 different languages, English, Greek, Farsi, and Arabic, and is also used by field workers and non-specialists who, of course, receive training, theoretical training, but also in-field training. This is a very unique characteristic of this program, that is, it adopts a non-clinical approach, and this is why it can be delivered by non-specialists. It can be delivered by refugees themselves, by refugee parents themselves, to their own children. And we did this because we had in our minds the limited resources of these refugee camps, which I have just described. Now, the population we target are children, adolescents, and young people who are forcibly displaced, who are affected, and they have experienced trauma during their displacement and their journey to Greece, and they are still in transit. And this is another unique characteristic. We came up with this term, the still in transit population, because we know that these people have done this journey to go to places like Germany, Canada, England, etc., and that they didn't want to stay here. So they are still traveling in a way, but nevertheless, we want them to receive, to be equipped of those factors, of those protective factors that will help them when they reach their end destination. Now, another characteristic is that the program doesn't need a lot of resources to be delivered, to be implemented, and for obvious reasons, because the resources from the NGOs and the refugee camps were extremely limited. Now we focused on those factors, those protective factors that we thought are extremely important for them to cultivate. For example, self-esteem, positive emotions. We emphasized on specific positive emotions which are associated with with resilience, such as a sense of belonging or gratitude. Gratitude is associated with resilience and well-being in every single research that was conducted with these populations. We emphasized also on hope and on identifying each child's and young person's character strengths, their charismas, and focusing on this and trying to cultivate these strengths for the person. We also emphasized on positive relationships and the sense of connectedness and togetherness. Also we had always in every single session a 3 minutes or a 5 minutes mindfulness breathing exercise, and this you will see from the findings, this has helped them quite a lot to regulate their emotions, and especially their aggressive outbursts, which is an indicator of PTSD, of post-traumatic stress disorder. As I said, the sessions are very structured, and the intervention is delivered via purposeful activities. These activities can take place as art therapy-based activities, or can be crafts activities, breathing exercises. It can be also a video that we will show to the children or adolescents, and then we will then discuss what has happened in the video, and then we will ask the children to discuss with us whether they had similar experiences, whether they felt similar experiences. Also, we emphasized on strengths-based storytelling. We emphasized on children's narratives, and this was particularly effective for young people because they want to say their stories, and their stories are not always dark stories and sad stories. They were telling us stories from the journey, which were extremely funny, and making these jokes and had a good laugh about was such a good experience for the group and the session. You can see these pictures are taken from the intervention. In here, we try to create a gratitude tree with leaves, and we asked the children to write a gratitude leaf, to write something that they feel grateful for. As I said, the mechanism we have used was that we tried to cultivate, we tried to enhance, to boost these psychological and social resources, such as hope or a sense of togetherness and belonging, and also we try to enhance their experiences, their positive experiences, because usually people focus only on the negative experiences, and especially these vulnerable populations, they focus on the things they can't do, while they seem to ignore of those things that they can still do. So we enhanced the future planning. We asked children to think of themselves in 5 years' time. And we asked them to see what steps they have to make in order to achieve their goals in 5 years' time. And this may be very, very small steps, like starting English lessons. If they said to us that in 5 years' time I want to become a teacher or something like that. Also, another way of cultivating these resources is we try to identify the child's and the community's strengths, and to enhance self-esteem and the sense of mindfulness. Now, let's go to see our findings after we conducted a study to see the efficacy of the program, to see whether it works. We adopted a mixed design approach. We collected 2 types of data. We collected self-reports, and we also conducted focus groups interviews after 3 months, 3 months after the completion of the intervention. Our sample was from Syria, Afghanistan mainly, but we had also participants, children from Iraq, Lebanon, and Kurdistan. And you will see that we used for the questionnaire study specific measures to measure well-being, optimism, self-esteem, and to see also the depressive symptoms, whether there was an impact on depressive symptoms. And the first 3 measures, the well-being index, optimism, and self-esteem, are the main components of resilience. You can see here that the results of the first measure, the well-being, you can see that we had 2 groups, the intervention group and the waitlist group. The first group was involved with the strengths for the journey intervention, and this is what we call the intervention group. And the other group that we used to compare our findings was the waitlist group, where these children were actually doing other activities like sports activities, football, basketball, and swimming, and other activities. So you can see that we have measured well-being before the intervention, is the blue box, and after the intervention, which is the red box. And you can see that well-being has increased after the strengths intervention. The same findings, similar findings, we found with hopeful thinking. Hopeful thinking has increased after the intervention. What we are extremely proud of is that self-esteem has increased dramatically after the intervention. And we were very happy to see this, because self-esteem is among the most important factors associated with resilience and building resilience skills. What we were, very happy to see is that also depressive symptoms, specific depressive symptoms, have decreased after the intervention. But let's just also see what has happened in the focus groups interviews. Have in your mind that focus groups interviews were conducted 3 months of the intervention. So we asked the children whether they remembered the intervention, what they remember was the most positive part of the intervention, what was the most their favorite part of the intervention. And you can see here that one of the main findings is that they really liked this sense of togetherness. You can see one lovely child which said that it is unusual living here to work as a team. So this was a very nice and new and nice experience. And another child would say that I really enjoy to be together, to talk together, to speak together about our stories and to share our stories. And especially this sense of togetherness and connectedness was one of our main objectives. We try to address this because these children have not been to schools for quite a few years, and they are used to just staying home and play games in a phone, or to just play football and that's it. They are not used to sitting around the table like children they do in school, and they share their stories, their jokes, and etc. So this is one of the things we consider as extremely important in any program. Just to give you an idea of what we are trying to do the last 4 years, since 2017, we have trained a lot of field workers who work with NGOs. We have trained all the educators that are working in the refugee camps in the Greek islands. And we have also delivered the Strengths for the Journey program to over 1,700 forcibly displaced children and youth. Now, the last few months, we have developed a new program. We call it the Capacity Building Program, but it is under the umbrella of Strengths for the Journey project. And what we do there is we have started to train refugees themselves, parents, young professionals, educators, community leaders. We are training them to deliver the Strengths for the Journey program to children and unaccompanied minors. And through this, we hope that more children will be benefited from this program. I have prepared to give you an example. I don't know how I am with the time. Let me just check. Okay, we have 3-4 minutes. It's just 3 minutes to show you one of the activities that is actually used also in the public schools in the Greek island of Lesbos. And it's also used in every educational setting that includes refugee children or adolescents. And I'm just going to show you the film and then go through the main points of this film, the way that we discuss this short film with the kids that take part in the intervention. Just give me a couple of minutes. I have to apologize for my very bad skills in technology. I think I have made it. Thank you so much for your patience.
Thank you so much, Celeste. That was really beautiful. Especially the video. I really enjoyed it. Have you finished your presentation, or did you still have a few slides that you wanted to share? All right. Well, we give her. Oh, yep. Celeste is back, but you're on mute. All right, while we wait for Sebastian to get back, just in case you have any questions, you can always pop them in the chat, and then we'll get to, oh, yeah, now I can hear you. All right, maybe, yeah, if you have any questions for Sebastian, you can pop them in the chat, and then we'll get to them when she's ready for it. So I'm a bit unsure if there was a bit more on that presentation, or if this video was the final bit. But let's see. We already have a couple of questions, so whenever you're ready, Celeste, we can move to that. And meanwhile, I can maybe encourage you to check out our website where we have our events listed. We have one in April on vaccine hesitation with another speakers from Queen Mary, Jonathan Kennedy, and we also have Professor Heidi Larson from LSHTM for that one, which I think will be quite a great event. I think that's on the 12th of April, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah. Hi, Swasti.
Hi, sorry about that. It took me three,
no
4
problem.
minutes to switch it off. Okay, great. Thank you for taking over.
Did you finish your presentation, or you had something else you wanted?
I just wanted to show just an example of the activities we do, and that we will watch this video, and then we will talk about all sorts of things, like, for example, what it is one child to help the other child, and how we can express gratitude, because in the end of the film we can see that the child who is benefited from this interaction says thank you in this beautiful way to the other child. So we will discuss this, and we will make certain points about gratitude and about how we can help each other in various tasks. So this was just to give you an insight of the activities of the intervention, but I would really appreciate any comments or suggestions, or if you have any questions, I'll be happy. Mm-hmm.
So there's already one question from Dennis. Dennis, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, thank you very much. I think it was an amazing presentation, because I'm also from Gaziantep, where there's a big camp of refugees from Syria. And actually, a lot of my relatives work there as well as psychologists, some of them. So I hear a lot of stories usually, but I was wondering about the classification of the asylum seeking and refugee status, and if that has any impact on your work, because there are a lot of people who are not classified as a refugee and who are just in that between stage of they're just in a country, like they're just between borders and they're waiting to be put in a status of either an asylum seeker or a refugee or a migrant. So I'm wondering if that impacts your funds or impacts your research, how you approach these kids that are not classified yet, I guess, if that makes sense.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
That's a great question, Denise. Actually, we include in this type of work in our program. We include children based on their age between 6 and 17 years of age. And we ignore this criteria, which is related to their status, their refugee status. So we will include the children who have already, their families have the refugee status, or the families are still seeking this status. We target vulnerable populations in general, um, uh, vulnerable children's population in general, and also our program is delivered in formal educational settings where there are also immigrants, children who are from immigrants' families. So for us, it's not part of our criteria. In order to engage with a child, is not part of our criteria, the status, the refugee status. But this is a very good, yes, a very good point. Yes.
Very much.
So before we move to the next question, Sevasti, your sound is a bit low. I was wondering if you could either speak a bit louder or maybe turn up the microphone.
Yes, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for this.
Okay. So we have another question from Randa. Randa, would you like to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Yeah. Good afternoon. I really enjoyed this talk. Of course, I'm half Lebanese, half Palestinian, so I kind of, it's very personal, this, what you've described. And also, we've had millions of refugees in Lebanon as well. So it's great to see your work, and I really appreciate it. I've written a little bit about health protection and health equity in MENA. But it was very easy to analyze what you shouldn't do in a classic context. But when it comes to refugees and context of conflict and war, we are relying on peanuts, aren't we? So that's why I put a question about funding. Is like it should be a priority. It should be looked at very differently, especially with COVID. So what's your thought? And how much did you struggle on this? Because I'm sure, your work doesn't always need a lot of money, but obviously it helps in these critical conditions.
Yes, yeah. That's a brilliant point, Rada. Are you in Lebanon now, Rada?
No, I'm teaching at SOAS, actually. I'm back safely. I spent Christmas there, but it's
Yeah,
heartbreaking. Yeah.
I know. I completely understand this. It's a heartbroken situation, especially in Greece, because Greece, anyway, in the last 10 years, um,
Mm,
it, um, it has a lot of economical problems. Um, but yes, funding is the big issue with this type of work. It's so limited.
mm,
Um, I um, I, I don't have a big fund. I have just a small fund, a very, very small fund from Queen
Mm,
Mary. Um,
mm,
and I keep going all these years thinking that, um, uh, these big organizations that these big NGOs, organizations will actually focus on mental health and the
mm,
social and psychological development of children, but it's a little bit disappointed that only,
mm,
we have not made enough
mm,
steps towards this
mm,
pathway. It just seems that mental health is ignored most of the
mm.
times from
Yeah,
most of the organizations.
yeah, and actually, but there are lots of voices in MENA about that because, for example, there is not just in adolescents are ignored, of course, but things like suicide rates are going up. And then, when the Syrian refugees, actually, a lot of people, doing psychology and mental health went to volunteer and work with, for 1 year, 2 years, and now it's 10 years.
Yes, yes,
So, so actually, and then people at Birzeit are trying to raise the issue of mental health and COVID. So the awareness is there, but where are the budgets? Where's the prioritization? You know.
yes.
So, and it's fantastic to see how much you can do on a string budget, but you shouldn't be. Maybe we shouldn't say that. You know, it's
Mm,
not about
mm.
throwing money;
I,
it's
com-
about caring. It's about. Yeah.
mm, mm. I
But
completely
how do
agree.
we think about it? How can it get to be a right, like it's a right, and for people, people in the UK, you know, that they
Yes,
expect from their government. What do we do with these people?
yes,
Millions
yes,
of them, and not just, and I know very little about, but the people talk about South, refugee camps with 60,000 people.
yes, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Mm,
Completely agree with you, Rada, and I understand your concerns, and thank you for your kind words. But one of my biggest dreams is to have people like yourself and other people who have a motivation and to just discuss how we can raise this funding, how we
yeah.
can
Mm,
fund not this intervention, because it's other interventions and programs and projects, how we can support these projects, because
mm,
definitely have a positive impact to these people. Is especially during COVID times, I
mm,
feel in Greece, because I don't have a lot of experience from places like Lebanon and other places. But in Greece, these people from last March, from March
mm,
2020 till now, they are entrapped in
mm,
camps. They are not allowed to go out, and these camps are like eh, eh, they they are not appropriate for this or any
mm,
population. Um,
yeah.
so any ideas? I mean, how we can raise a voice? It will be.
The arm, I don't know. I mean, basically, social protection and health should not be, that's what you can argue is it shouldn't be an exception, and it should be extended. And COVID has shown that you can't isolate people in terms of health. You can't.
Mm,
So this is the only thing I'm thinking. So I'm looking for, to talk with people on the ground to see how they frame it rather than me sitting here, just with big ideas about social protection. I know the ILO in Beirut, when I worked a little bit with them, they were saying actually you should have universal health coverage. That way, You can also have funding from the local governments, local municipalities to serve everybody, you know, because what happened in some situations in Jordan and Lebanon is, you know, the Lebanese were saying, I'm sorry, I'm going to be rude. We're saying, oh, the Syrians are swamping our hospitals. And actually they had funding, but the poor Lebanese in the middle of nowhere don't get any funding. So there are already issues that are very real and that call for ideal solutions. But I wanted to see what other people, practitioners, you know, whether they think the same or, you know.
I think you raised some excellent points there, Randa. I'm a bit conscious of time, so I was
Yeah,
wondering
sorry,
to the next question, if that's okay.
sure, I'm sorry.
No, not at all. It's great. So it's still a bit difficult to hear you. So if you could speak up even a little bit more, that'd be great. I think we have a question from Jenny. Jenny, would you like to unmute yourself and ask a question?
Hi. Thank you so much. That talk was really fascinating. And all your work is really amazing how you're doing it. I just wondered, for when you were implementing the program, I was wondering how you coped with any like children or family members or the NGO professionals who were a bit uncertain about taking part, and like how you navigated that.
Jenny, this is a very good question. Can you hear me now? Is it better? This is a brilliant question. There were quite a lot of difficulties, especially because of some cultural differences. We had, for example, families that they didn't want their daughters to participate in the program and be in the same group with male participants. And we always had a person from the community there who was also helping us to understand the norms and these cultural differences. And also we try to arrange a meeting with them and to visit them or to visit them at their homes. And then we had an opportunity to discuss what we were trying to do and how this program will benefit their children. We in the end we had very positive responses from the parents, and that's why we are thinking that we should be including parents in our work. They became our biggest fans because they could see the impact on their children after a few sessions. Always with a discussion and with a lot of respect for these cultural differences, we tried to address their concerns.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I think we have one more question that's a bit more technical. It's from Donna, who's had to leave, unfortunately, but Donna is asking how you went about evaluating the well-being of these children in the program.
The well-being was a specific measure. We included a scale in the questionnaire. And we have a measure. We have given this questionnaire before the intervention, and then after the intervention, we have given the same questionnaire, and we could see that there was a difference on the levels of well-being pre and post intervention. Also, well-being was assessed 3 months later within the focus groups interviews. We had 3 questions around the component of the well-being and asking the participants how the specific activities have affected their happiness levels, their functioning, their everyday functioning. So we had quite a few measures in order to capture any impact on the well-being.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I think so. We now reached 2 o'clock, which is the time that we set up that this would end. So I think I speak for everyone when I say this was a fantastic presentation and really insightful. We're really, really happy to have learned more about how you can implement a program without having sort of a huge budget or a huge sort of apparatus behind you to be able to make a difference in life of people who are very vulnerable and who are have quite a lot of baggage to carry and who do not know where they are going. So thank you so much for that. For everyone who's been here today, thank you so much for coming. And I'm really glad to see that so many of you have written in the chat and asked questions and shared your experiences. So that's really great. As I mentioned, I will publish this recording on the website. So where you signed up for this event, you'll also find a recording once I've uploaded it. I'll email everyone the link so that you have it. So yeah, I think that was it from us today. But again, join me in thanking Sevasti for joining us today. And thank you so much for everyone.
Thank you too. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very, very much for listening, and I appreciate your time, and I know you have busy lives. And, thank you very much for the invitation, Ken. I'm really honored for this opportunity.
Super. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a nice weekend when that time comes. Bye-bye.
Bye.